My daughter-in-law slammed the door and said, "You're just a guest here." So I packed, smiled, and froze their bank account. She wanted to run the house, I reminded her, who funded it. "You're lucky we let you live here," my daughter-in-law hissed, slamming the guest room door so hard I felt the whole hallway shudder. "You don't get a say under our roof." I remained seated in the living room in the armchair where I had painted fresh white baseboards with my own hands the first day they moved in. That chair held the weight of decades, surgeries, hospital shifts, whispered prayers for my late husband, and now it felt heavier than ever beneath me. After my husband passed from cancer 2 years ago, I packed up what little I had left and drove to Colorado, offering to move in with my son and daughter-in-law. They had just had their second child, a healthy little girl who still smelled like warmth and hope. I thought living with family again would bring comfort. I thought helping with the grandkids, preparing meals, and sharing the bills would be a balm for all of us. I never expected to become a guest in my own home. I had always paid my share. I used my nurse's pension to cover groceries, utilities, medical bills, everything I could spare. I volunteered to pay for preschool tuition when they faced rising costs, and I handled the increased electricity and gas bills during the brutal Colorado winters. I never asked for anything in return, not a thank you. Not even acknowledgement. I thought family worked that way: you give until it hurts and you keep giving. At first, everything was as I hoped. I was the caretaker, the wise grandmother with jokes and warm hands. The kids laughed when they saw me. My daughter-in-law smiled politely. My son called me Mom the way he always did. But slowly the warmth receded like a tide pulling out to sea. Comments stopped being polite and began to sting. "Mom, you left the garage door open again," my daughter-in-law snapped one day. I mumbled my apology and moved the pickup inside without another word. A week later, I found my framed family photos moved to a corner shelf labeled Mom's Keepsakes. The tone shifted more. They started doing things without me, making meal plans in a group chat I was removed from, hiring a housekeeper when I offered to clean, enrolling the kids in camps without so much as a mention. My presence, once valued, began to crumble into inconvenience. "I thought you said you were staying temporarily," she said last month as I served cinnamon rolls in my softest voice. "We need the guest room for storage or my craft corner." She flashed a tight smile I did not appreciate. "You should get your own place." I did not answer. I only pushed back my chair and carried my plates to the sink as quietly as I could. Then this morning came. I was preparing oatmeal and fresh fruit for the kids, my usual routine, when I heard their voices through the hallway. I did not mean to eavesdrop, but it was hard not to hear when she screamed it so loud. "You're lucky we let you live here," she hissed, her hands slamming the guest room door. "You don't get a say under our roof." That sentence echoed. "You don't get a say, you're lucky." The fault lines of my heart shifted. I carried the bowls of oatmeal into the dining room, placing them carefully while my grandson and granddaughter stared up at me. They still treated me like their grandma. They smiled. They thanked me. They believed I belonged. But where did I truly belong? Later, I turned to my son, the one whose first word I heard, whose first steps I cheered. His face had the same eyes, but today there was something different, a hesitance. A guilt that vanished when he glanced at his wife. "I'm sorry," he said, looking away. "I did not mean," he began. She interrupted from the couch, perched with her phone in clipped posture. "Let's just let her stew. She'll get it eventually." And just like that, they dismissed me. I was no longer Mom, not really. I had become someone they tolerated, someone whose money they spent but whose presence they despised. A half hour later, I sat in my old chair, my hands folded in my lap like a soldier preparing for orders. I thought of my husband. I thought of the home we built together. I thought of the paint we applied and the floors we refinished by moonlight. Now someone else ruled the house we bought, someone who treated me as a liability. The tears wanted to come, but I blinked them back. It was not about anger. It was about truth. It was about remembering that while names could be removed, contributions could not be erased. I rose slowly. The chair creaked in protest. I patted it once as if to say thank you. When I stood, I needed a plan. And with her door still shut behind her hissed words, I promised myself I would remind them who really kept their lives afloat. I wake before dawn, as I always have, because the house feels emptier in the dark and I feel needed, even when I am not. I slip into the kitchen in my slippers, pulling on an apron that still fits me from 5 years ago. I light the stove and start chopping vegetables, carrots for stew, spinach for quiche, apples for oatmeal. I set the coffee pot to brew and place bowls and spoons on the counter. I do this every morning without complaint because feeding my family feels like my purpose. I hustle to shower and dress before the kids wake, then guide them through breakfast, reminding my granddaughter to wash her hands and helping my grandson find matching socks. Their laughter fills the kitchen and I smile because at least I belong to them. We sit together at the long oak table, the same one I helped them pick out at the furniture store 2 years ago. I serve oatmeal in plain white bowls, fresh fruit on the side, and a pitcher of orange juice. When I sit down, I take a seat at the far end. My daughter-in-law slides her plate across and joins my son. My words are met with polite silence. My questions are met with clipped answers. My presence feels like background blur rather than a face to cherish. Throughout the meal, I feel eyes flicker toward me, my son compassionately, my daughter-in-law judgmentally. I swallow a bite of oatmeal softly, tasting cinnamon and fruit, wondering when I became wallpaper. I fold laundry in silence later, thinking of the day I first offered to help with bills. "I'll pay for utilities," I had said. "Maybe preschool just to take pressure off you too," he nodded. She looked uncertain. I created a trust account in my name. My pension checks were deposited there. From it came monthly withdrawals, electricity, gas, groceries, preschool tuition. I believed I was building quiet security for them. I believed giving was enough, but money can become a weapon rather than a gift. I kept the trust statements in my desk drawer, not to demand anything back but to remind myself of the steady flow of care I was giving. And still, I did not ask for credit. One afternoon, I overheard her say to a friend, "She's just here because she has nowhere else to go." Something inside me tightened. That night, I offered to cover field trip fees. "You don't have a vote," she cut in without looking up from her phone. The heaviest words I had heard in a long time. That night I pulled out the trust account folder. Monthly transfers. $2,000, $1,800, $2,300, every charge authorized by me. I called my financial advisor. "Mrs. Patterson," he said warmly, "what can I do for you today?" "I want to confirm something," I said. "The trust account under my name, I am still the sole trustee?" "Absolutely, you are the only one who can authorize transactions. And if I wanted to freeze it, then it freezes." I looked at the most recent statement: grocery charge, tuition payment, clothing receipt. I did not feel cruelty, I felt clarity. "I'd like you to freeze the account," I said. "Consider it done." And just like that, I took the first step back toward myself. I didn't tell anyone, not my son, not the kids. Not the woman who had hissed through her teeth that I was just a guest. I simply smiled. That quiet kind of smile that knows something no one else does. That afternoon, I brewed tea, folded laundry, and baked a peach cobbler for the kids' afternoon snack, one last gesture from the woman they thought they could disregard. I placed it on the counter with a note: "Enjoy, darlings." Grandma. Then I went to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared out the window. No rage, no tears, just the silent hum of a power they never realized I had. I had given them love in the form of funds, but now I was taking something back, not the money, but my place, my pride, my voice. I woke early that morning with no alarm, no noise, just a steady breath and a certainty I had not felt in years. The sun had barely touched the curtains when I sat at the dining table my last morning in that house and wrote a simple note in my cleanest handwriting. No emotion, no flourish, just the truth in ink. "Thank you for reminding me who I really am." I folded the paper once, placed it beneath the salt shaker in the center of the kitchen table, and set a warm cup of tea beside it. It was jasmine, her favorite. Or maybe it used to be, I could not remember anymore. I packed only one suitcase, just enough for the next chapter: my favorite cardigan, the pearl earrings my husband gave me on our 25th anniversary. The worn paperback I never finished. Everything else, every dish I had washed, every blanket I had folded, every meal I had paid for, could stay. I would not take crumbs from a table I was no longer welcome at. I left the house without a sound. No door slam, no goodbye. I slid the keys into the mailbox slot and walked toward the waiting taxi. The driver asked if I needed help with my bag. I smiled and said no. It was light. Much lighter than I expected. 2 hours later, I was unlocking the door of a one-bedroom apartment tucked at the edge of Colorado Springs, with the hot springs just a few blocks down. A place I had quietly purchased 5 years ago with part of my inheritance, not out of distrust but out of wisdom, a just-in-case plan. I never thought I would need it, but I was glad I did. The apartment smelled of pine wood and clean floors, empty but not lonely. I opened the windows and let in the cool morning air. I sat at the table and watched the light pour across the floorboards, unbothered and free. The silence felt different here. It felt like mine. For the first time in years, I didn't hear footsteps rushing upstairs or voices behind closed doors. I didn't hear whispers about my forgetfulness or irritation when I asked to be included. I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's house. I turned off my phone. The calls came within days. First, my son, a text, "Mom, did something happen to the account? The card's not working." Then another, the school called, tuition bounced. "Can we talk?" Then my daughter-in-law, "Is this some kind of joke? The electric company says we're 2 weeks overdue." I didn't respond, not because I wanted revenge, not because I enjoyed watching them flail, but because I had nothing left to say that they were ready to hear. They had made it very clear I was just a guest. Guests don't get emergency calls. Guests don't carry burdens. Guests don't hold the power to destroy or save. But I had never been a guest. I had been the quiet current beneath their comfort, the invisible spine of their stability. And when I walked out, the whole body trembled. A week after I left, they received a formal notice from the bank. "No funds available." A second notice from the school: "Your child's tuition payment has failed. Immediate resolution required." And finally, the utility company: "Your account is now past due. Electricity services will be suspended if not paid within 48 hours. It happened faster than even I expected, not because I wanted it to, but because they had come to rely so blindly on what I provided that they never built anything of their own. I had made it too easy, too warm, too safe. They had forgotten the hands that held it all together, so when those hands let go, they fell. I sat on my balcony that evening, a cup of warm tea in my hand, watching the sky darken over Colorado Springs. I thought of my grandchildren. I missed their laughter. I missed their sticky fingers and sleepy hugs. But I would not go back, because if I did, I would be returning not as a mother but as an enabler. They needed to learn, and I needed to live. In the peace of that moment, I breathed deeply and smiled, not out of bitterness but out of truth. I had left quietly, but the silence I left behind was deafening. They unraveled faster than I expected. A week after I froze the trust account, the texts turned frantic. My son sent message after message, each more urgent than the last. "Mom, please call. We're trying to figure this out. Can you just explain what's happening? They may shut off the Wi-Fi today." Then came the emails, pleading, justifying, apologizing. But I did not reply. I had spent years replying, years accommodating. Years softening my words and shrinking to make space for people who needed my money but not my voice. This time I let the silence speak for me. From what I heard through friends and neighbors, the house I left behind was no longer warm. The pantry was bare. The fridge, once full of labeled containers and store-brand milk, now held only ketchup, an expired carton of eggs, and the last of the almond milk. My daughter-in-law lost her job 2 weeks in. Something about too many missed deadlines and not enough child care. My son took up temporary work, mowing lawns, hauling trash, anything that paid by the hour. He used to wear a tie every day. Now he wore blisters. A neighbor I used to walk with called one morning just to talk. "I saw her yesterday," she said. "Your daughter-in-law." She was in the driveway yelling into her phone like someone stole her whole life. I almost laughed. Because in a way, they had stolen mine first. The kitchen that once smelled of cinnamon and morning pancakes now sat cold. The oven was rarely used. The dining table was empty. She used to slam that guest room door like punctuation on every argument. Now she left it open, hoping maybe I'd walk back through it, but I would not, because I was no longer the woman in the background. No longer the free babysitter, no longer the one cooking in silence while being spoken of in whispers. I was gone, completely. I had not blocked them, I had simply stepped out of reach. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, a message came through, just 3 words: "We need you." A few hours later, another: "Please come back, I'm sorry." And then one final voicemail, her voice shaken but trying to sound composed. "Marjorie, I know we said some things we shouldn't have. I know we were unfair, but we need help. The kids need stability. John's working late every night and well, it's hard. Please, just can we talk?" I played it twice. Then I deleted it. because something in her voice still sounded like she believed she could fix this with words. But it was not her words that built that house, it was not her effort that kept it warm, it was mine, and I was done pretending otherwise. She thought I was a guest, but I had been the foundation. And when I walked out, the whole house remembered who had kept it standing. My mornings are quieter now, not the kind of quiet that aches, but the kind that feels like a soft exhale after holding your breath for too long. I brew a pot of Earl Grey each day at 7 sharp. I sit by the window of my little apartment, watching the steam rise from my mug, and for the first time in years, no one needs anything from me. No one's asking what's for breakfast. No one's handing me a grocery list or barking a passive-aggressive thanks as they rush out the door. It is just me and peace. The days stretch gently now. I read the books I never finished, the ones that gathered dust while I was busy being useful or feeling useful. I've started writing again, nothing serious, just letters to myself, little reminders that I am still here and still whole. Sometimes I take walks down to the hot springs, the sound of water trickling over rocks, a simple melody reminding me that everything flows eventually, even pain. I joined a group at the local rec center. Women retired, resilient, and ready. We meet twice a week for tea and discussion. Most of them are widows like me, women who poured their lives into families only to find themselves emptied in return. We talk about grown children who forgot, husbands who took but never taught, and the strange silence that comes when you realize you're no longer needed, not for support, not for purpose, just existence. There is something profound in our collective vulnerability, a poignant reassurance that we are not alone. A shared knowing passes between us when our stories spiral beyond explanation yet demand to be heard. But we also laugh loudly with unexpected joy. Some of the ladies call me grandma with the last laugh. I don't mind, I earned it. Goodness, I earned it. We giggle over shared memories, the bad haircut a daughter threw a tantrum over, the disastrous casserole burned to the bottom of the pan, the husband who thought a blender could solve all problems. And how we secretly enjoyed the chaos more than we'd admit. Sometimes I help them review their wills, their savings, their legal documents hidden away in kitchen drawers and shoe boxes. I show them how to check who really owns their house, to ensure their names are on the deed. I remind them to keep the original title documents in a safe place, not on a shelf gathering dust. We talk about reading the fine print. About never assuming love will automatically protect you when illness, death, or greed knock at the door. I let them cry. I hold their hands through the realization that betrayal can be clothed in familiarity. One woman cried when she discovered her son had forged her signature to refinance her house. Another smiled through tears as she shredded the joint credit card her daughter kept maxing out. We call those moments Taking Back Tuesdays, because sometimes justice is not found in courtrooms filled with lawyers in suits. It is found in quiet afternoons with a shredder and a witness, when your own trembling hands decide. Enough is enough. I do not hate my son. That love never completely goes away, even when it is tested, even when it wavers. It is love shaped by decades of lullabies, bandaged knees, college essays titled Why My Mom is the Best, and tearful goodbyes at the airport. I do not hate my daughter-in-law either, though I admit there were days when I questioned whether her kindness was genuine or performative. But I no longer offer myself on the altar of being liked. I am not here to be accepted. I am here to live. I gave too much for too long. The kind of giving that meant saying yes when I wanted to say no. That meant putting their needs ahead of mine day after day until my own mirror reflected a stranger. But when I finally stopped giving without boundaries, when I pulled my voice back, I did not lose them. I found myself. I found the woman who once dreamed of writing a book. The one who hated wasting time and cherished quiet solitude. The one who missed the sound of her own heartbeat, not someone else's deadlines. She was there, hidden behind decades of duty and expectation. If I could whisper to that woman, the one washing dishes at 2:00 a.m., the one poring over furnace bills and life insurance forms, I would say, yes, you matter, even when no one says so. Especially when no one says so. So now I spend my mornings calmly, my days deliberately. I meet friends for poetry readings at the library. I sit for hours by the old oak tree in the park, sketching lines on a notepad. I volunteer at the senior center, helping with the lunch program or simply offering company and conversation to women whose names I may not always remember. but whose smiles I never forget. I have learned that retirement is not an ending. It is a new beginning, a chance to rediscover who you are when no one is asking you to be anything. One afternoon, I hosted my first proper dinner here. Simple dishes, roasted vegetables, a harvest salad, store-bought bread. I invited 2 ladies from the group and a neighbor I met at the coffee shop. We laughed so much I needed help cleaning up. The table echoed with conversation, ringing with connection. And I realized there in the soft lamplight that this feeling is what life was always meant to be. I can feel the river of time around me, but it is not dragging me toward regret. It nourishes the banks where I now stand, wide, rooted. My phone still lights up with messages from my son. He says he misses the sound of my laughter. He asks if I need help with anything. He ends with, "Mom, you're welcome back anytime." But I do not answer. I know words can hold love only for so long. It is actions that speak across rooms. I visit when I feel like it. We meet in cafes, not at that kitchen table anymore. And when I return home, I sleep peacefully, the door closing softly behind me. This is my life now, full, calm, and unapologetically mine. And in the quiet mornings, I sip my Earl Grey and think, I found myself, and she was worth waiting for. I do not hate my son, that would be too simple. Too clean. Hatred implies distance, and our pain, his and mine, was never distant. It was tangled, rooted, grown from the same soil that once bore bedtime stories, scraped knees, and a little boy who used to cling to the hem of my apron just because he wanted to be close. I raised him to be better, kinder, more grateful, and for a time he was. He held doors open for elderly women. He volunteered on weekends. He used to kiss me on the cheek before dinner and whisper thank you without anyone asking. He once told me at 13 that when he grew up, he would buy me a house so I could stop working late nights at the hospital. But life has a way of stripping the softness off people, especially when they choose pride over memory. Especially when comfort becomes entitlement. I see now that I shielded him too long. I protected him from the weight of responsibility, thinking I was loving him, but in doing so, I let it crush me instead. And still, I do not hate him, I just will not rescue him anymore. There is a difference between walking away in anger and stepping back in wisdom. Mine was not an exit fueled by bitterness. It was powered by clarity. Motherhood taught me many things. It taught me how to stretch $1 into 4 meals, how to hide tears while stirring soup, how to smile when I was drowning, how to sit through judgment at PTA meetings in a second-hand coat while pretending not to care, how to endure disrespect in the name of keeping peace at home, how to pretend over and over again that I was fine. But the most important thing motherhood taught me was when to let go. Because when your hands are always holding someone else up, you forget what standing feels like. You bend so often you forget you were ever upright. To the women who might hear this someday, the mothers, the grandmothers, the wives, the caregivers, this is for you. Do not let them turn you into a stranger in the house you helped build. Do not let their comfort become your prison. Do not give and give and give until you vanish into the walls, nothing more than a whisper at the edge of their busy lives. Keep your name on the deed. Keep your name on your dignity. And when they start calling you bitter or difficult or dramatic, remember, they only say that when you stop handing them everything. They will call you selfish the moment you stop being selfless for their convenience. When they forget who taught them how to hold a spoon, how to fold a shirt, how to comfort a child, remind them not with lectures or pleading, but with silence. Not rage, not vengeance, just the quiet truth of your absence. Because some lessons are only learned in the echo of a door closing behind you. I used to stand in that kitchen like a shadow, cooking meals for people who no longer looked me in the eye. I used to walk on eggshells in my own home, afraid that my presence would disrupt the fragile illusion of their independence. I used to swallow my opinions whole because it wasn't my place. I was made to feel like a guest in the very place I helped build. And that broke something in me, not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, like a candle burning to the end of its wick. Now I wake each morning in the soft glow of my own space. I pour my tea with both hands, no one interrupting, no chores waiting, no passive-aggressive sighs from across the room. I eat when I'm hungry, I laugh when I feel like it. I play music out loud and sing even if I'm off key. I taste every drop of peace I once paid for them to have. They still struggle. I hear through the grapevine that the bank account remains empty. The house is cold in winter. She lost her job. He picks up shifts where he can. The kids wear the same shoes for 2 school years straight. I do not watch. I do not gloat. But I do remember. I remember being called a burden. I remember the grocery lists with their names written on everything except mine. I remember the way she said, "You don't get a say under our roof," as if I hadn't funded the walls that held her words. I remember sitting in that house, heart pounding, hearing my name in hushed tones when they thought I was asleep. And if they ever wonder how it all fell apart, if they ever sit in that cold kitchen and look at one another with confusion and ask, "What happened?" they will have to answer this. What happens when the hands that held you finally let go? When the woman who covered your rent, bought your groceries, paid your bills, and smiled through every insult stops, I gave them warmth. They gave me warning labels on food. I gave them stability. They gave me exile. I gave them memories. They returned convenience. So I gave them what they feared most, freedom from me, and I will not take it back. As I sit now, surrounded by books and music and women who see me, not use me, I do not wish to undo the past. I do not pine for reconciliation. I do not pray for their return. I hope they learn. And if they never do, then I hope they at least understand what it means to lose someone who never asked for much, only respect. Because at the end of it all, that is what this story has always been about. Not revenge, not resentment, but remembrance. Remembrance of who I was before I was silenced, before I was labeled, before I was thanked for everything with nothing. So to the daughters-in-law who forget, who funded their homes, to the sons who grow too proud to remember, whose hands wiped their tears, to the families who think love is conditional and care is transactional, let me say it plainly. My daughter-in-law called me a guest, but today I own peace, and she's just paying rent to survive. Thank you for sitting with me through this story. If you felt a spark of recognition, if a part of you whispered, "That could have been me," then remember this. We are many mothers, grandmothers, women whose silence once filled every room and whose strength now fills every word. We do not shout, we remember, we reclaim, we remind the world what happens when the quietest woman finally speaks. Because when a grandma speaks, the world doesn't just listen, it changes.